Oklahoma barely survives Iowa State. They barely survive an Iowa State team that's been up and down, lost their best player first half of the first game this season. They host the Cyclones, and they're up by 7. Iowa State driving in the red zone. Quarterback throws the ball a little too high. Brock Purdy to the tight end, reaches back to catch it, tips it, safety catches it. Everybody in the stadium basically exhales. There is no jubilation. They just exhale. We dodge another one. And Trevor, as a Sooner, Bryce is a Big 12, like warlord or hack just as a quarterback. Oklahoma, all you guys are dudes. These guys, to me, strike me as this. You have had homeboys that you go to their place, 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and you're like, dude, we're out tonight. Let's go. Get your shit. Let's go. They bellyache, they grumble, they slow put their shit on. All right, man, we're going. All right. Hold on a second. Let me go in here and get my stuff together. They don't want to go. Then they go out with you and they luck up and hit. Like they come up on something. Like they luck up. They didn't want to go in the first place. Like they don't want to be there. And to me, like when I'm watching games, Oklahoma does not want to go to the playoffs. They don't. But their Big 12 boys like won't let them chill. No, man. Come on. It's gonna be shit. So-and-so is gonna be there. It's gonna be lit. They got a table for us. Come on, man. And they don't want to go. But every time they step out, they belch. And like something beautiful like turns and is like, were you belching at me? Here's my number, sir. Call me next week. In fact, call me in a couple hours. Like, that's Oklahoma. This is Iowa State. We talked about them with Kansas. We talked about them with every single school. Trevor, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll get with the guys. These dudes don't want to go to the playoffs. We should just not force them to go to the playoffs. Am I right?
I think here's the difference in what we're seeing this year as compared to years in the past where Oklahoma teams have gone to the playoffs. They've been wearing a mask, and that mask is a picture of Baker Mayfield, of Jalen Hurts, of Kyler Murray. They've been hiding behind that mask, and it's a very similar relationship to what we just talked about with Ryan Day and C.J. Stroud. The head coach play caller with the star quarterback, Heisman frontrunner, or even winner runs the show. They are the mask to the program. Pedestrian defenses in the past, but they found a way to score enough points. Run games that weren't all that great, but they found a way to get it done in the air. It's just been a mask. Now this year, you look at the relationship between Lincoln Riley and whoever they run out there at starting quarterback, and you don't have confidence in it. You've got a defense at Oklahoma who's actually playing a lot better than years prior. Not saying they're good, not saying obviously they're Georgia, but they're more consistent than they have been in the past. You just don't have that mask at quarterback that's kind of putting everything else under the bed, hiding it, making it look like it's a perfectly made, military bed in the morning. It's ruffled. It's ruffled, and they're finding a way to win because they've been there before, and they're not going up against elite talent week in and week out, but it's not near the same level of confidence week in and week out that we're used to in Norman.
Heck, to that point, they are not at the level that they should be, that we expect, that they hoped for, or that the world has now seen. If the following scenario plays out, what happens? Michigan edges out Ohio State in like a classic, single, double overtime, whatever, field goal, this far in, this much past, whatever. Then they go on and obliterate whoever comes from the West, because that's what's going to happen. A 2-loss Ohio State team, and if it all comes down to a Big 12 lethargic, we didn't want to be here, but I guess if y'all push us out here, we'll go ahead and do the thing. But then we want to be back home. Oklahoma, what happens? What does the committee do? What should they do? What should they do with a 2-loss U.S. military Ohio State team?
What's really hard, George, is in that scenario, you're also leaving out the fact that there's a possible 2-loss Alabama that these people got to talk about. So now, as the committee, you're sitting there going, do I leave out the Big 12 champion? Do I leave out an undefeated Cincinnati? Do I leave out a 1-loss Notre Dame? And do I take a 2-loss Alabama and a 2-loss Ohio State? Even though Alabama and Ohio State, line them up 10 times against any of the people that I just mentioned.
Yep.
And both of those teams win at least 7.
Yep. If not more.
Yeah, if not more. That's why I said at least 7.
By 7 touchdowns, or are you saying just 7 wins?
No. I said if you line them up 10 times, like 10 times, like 10 games, like hypothetically they play their own season.
I think it's by 7
both.
touchdowns, so keep going.
But anyway, that's a great point, Bryce. I appreciate you. But anyway, I think that it's just such a shit show of a year, pardon my French, with everybody going down and everyone like it's awesome as a fan because you get to have these types of debates at the bars and with your buddies. But I think as football guys, and all of us sitting here are those guys, it's not hard for us to be able to peg which teams probably deserve it based upon how they're playing and what they're doing right now. And for me, a 2-loss Ohio State team, it would be a damn shame to not have them in the playoffs. And then if Michigan goes out and earns that stripe, it'd be a damn shame to not have a Michigan team just based upon what everyone else is doing and what the pulse of the rest of the country is. Because to your point, George, it's been pretty like non-existent. Oklahoma's done everything they can to screw this up. And, it's just going to be crazy. But realistically speaking, I think there is a scenario if people, open their eyes and watch the game where you could have 2 Big Ten teams and 2 SEC teams in the playoffs this year.
Not happening.
It's never going to happen. But my point being is take the losses out of it.
I hear exactly what you're saying. The best teams, I get it, but I'm going back to it again. The loss column says everything. If you lose 2 games, you're not getting in, even though, like you said, you line up, whether it's Michigan or Ohio State, whoever loses next week, you line them up in the Big 12, and they are running the table, absolutely running the table. But they're 2 losses.
It sucks, dude. It's such a bad.
Hey, Bryce, we're going to you next. But Bryce, I'm throwing to you. Take us out of here. But to Trevor, to your point, based off of Hack's solid evidence, Ohio State lost to a then top 10 Oregon. Then they would lose theoretically to a then top 5 Michigan because Oregon will drop and everybody will get pulled up. They lost to 2 top 10 teams. Those 2 teams would both knock out Oklahoma. They would both knock out Oklahoma.
Said, don't lose.
Don't lose.
Everybody else.
Oh, God.
I'm just simply saying.
Hey.
So technically it's 2 losses. But who are those losses to?
Yeah, it's a shame, man. I love my guy TK so bad, but he's part of this woke society. This woke society. It's all about the L's. Dude, I tell you what, if I'm in this committee right now, I'm saying the playoff is the 4 best teams.
Oh, you're so full of it.
Oh,
meaning, go ahead, Bryce.
What handouts, bro?
Bryce,
handouts for what? It's the 4 best teams.
Bryce, how do you
shouldn't
define
even sniff
best?
the front door.
How do you define Brett?
It's literally it's what Hack just said. I think that you have an Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State playoff because right now, tell me who is better in the country. I don't see how for a fan and for the media polls, the coaches, the AP, it doesn't matter. For the playoff system to be truly I don't know why pure comes to mind, but just a pure playoff system for 4 teams, not this is why we need 12 or whatever else, but for 4 teams. How do you not say it's the 4 best teams? I could give 2 shits about what your losses are. Because Trevor, you can't tell me. I love you to death, but you cannot tell me that Oklahoma should be in this playoff. No, even if
correct.
So
I don't have OU
if
in my top four. I don't have OU in my top four.
So
I even said it last time I was on here. OU gets one loss. They're not in the conversation. They're not in the conversation.
So you're saying a top 15 Baylor team at home. A top 15 Baylor team at home that beats OU. That's a in terms of like, hey man, stamp it at the bar, you deserve a drink. That's a hell of a game, right? So, but what I'm saying is if they beat Iowa State, and if they go to Bedlam and beat Oklahoma State and then beat them again in the Big 12 championship, that's a one-loss OU team that's pretty. I mean, I would venture that most people would say they deserve to be in the playoffs. But what I'm saying is there's no way in hell that they should be in the playoffs based off of what they've done week in and week out.
Listen, I agree with you that in that scenario, Ohio State is a better football team than Oklahoma. But it still comes down to if you lose 2 games in a year, you just don't deserve to be in.
But Trevor, does it not matter?
This is not a normal year.
But does it not matter who you lost to? Does that have some context?
It does until your losses start piling up. At this
point, is 2 losses piling up?
Yeah.
In your championship game? Not counting the regular season. I'm talking about 1 loss has to be in the championship game. You're talking about two losses, 1 regular season, 1 in the championship game. You're done. That's piling up.
And I'm a head coach, and if I'm in the Big Ten or the SEC, I'm saying, hey boys, let's go out here. We can drop a couple. We'll still get in. Why are we?
I can't wait to happen. I can't wait. I can't wait for like Alabama to beat Georgia. Fucking nobody's undefeated. It's going to be a bloodbath. And what's going to happen is the committee's going to sit there and be like, all right, screw it. We're going to an expansion right now. They're like, hey, the Orange Bowl wasn't slotted for it, but here we go. We'll have them play it. We'll schedule another one. We'll throw this shit together.
In that scenario, my UTSA Roadrunners are going to give them stuff, and they're going to fuck off.
No, sir. Trevor, it does matter, though. If I'm on a fight circuit and I'm knocking out the baddest dude in every boys club in Southern California, and Hackenberg takes on Tyson Fury, it don't go his way. Then he takes on Wilder, it don't go his way. And he runs the table on the rest of his schedule. Those 2 would take out me and everybody else in my schedule.
I don't disagree. But at some point, you got to draw the line. A 1 loss, yes, get in. You get 2 losses, do you deserve it? The top 4 teams in the country, do you deserve it? Or is this year, and this may be a good transition, that you give it to a team like Cincinnati, who's been undefeated for 2 years straight? Are they the best team in college football? Heck no. We talked about they struggled with Tulsa a couple weeks ago. But they're undefeated.
But you held it to Cincinnati. You just answered the premise of this question. If they open this door, they put this team on this screen and they put this team on this screen and they say, could these guys, no matter what they've done, beat these guys? If they boil it down, if they say, hold the schedules, because all schedules aren't created equal, and hold the competition. If they have 2 dual screens and they're looking at Oklahoma or Cincinnati and they're looking at Alabama and Ohio State, possible potential, or Georgia, possible potential 2-loss teams, it's just not going to go that way. They've already kind of showed their hand how they slotted Cincinnati in the beginning. And really, we all split. Half of us were like, damn, that's kind of low. These guys were undefeated. And the other half was like, well, which team above Cincinnati, above them, could they go out and beat at a neutral site? That's what it's really like. When you boil it down, that's what it's going to wind up coming down to, which is going to push this thing to the field of 12. But what do you want to see? The report card or the best fight? That's what it's going to come down to. Do you want the report card or do you want the best fight?
Yeah, I agree with you. But the thing about the committee that kind of pissed me off was that they weren't definitive about anything, because to the point that we're all making, Trevor's saying that, the loss is your loss, or I guess really the point that you're trying to make, George, is your loss matters. Trevor's saying
Right.
It doesn't matter, right? It's all about the wins. The
Right.
committee showed us when they put Oregon in front, when Oregon's already won at Ohio State but lost to Stanford.
Correct.
Right? It just says, like, what are you guys looking at? If Cincinnati is undefeated for the last 2 years, and if Oregon comes into Ohio State and beats, a top 10 program, it's great, but then they lose to the last team in the Pac-12. What's validated? How do you? I don't know. I don't know where you go from there.
But here's an interesting thing too. And I had this conversation with Josh Perry again. I hate bringing that back up, but he and I were talking about Michigan and Michigan State, and Michigan was ranked ahead of Michigan State despite the head-to-head loss.
Right.
And
last week, yeah,
their excuse was that statistically speaking, Michigan was better in just about every category than Michigan State. And then I proceeded to be like, well, then why is Oregon still ranked ahead of Ohio State? Because I guarantee you, if you do some statistical analysis,
it's not
Ohio State, it ain't even freaking close, right?
Correct.
So that's a great point, Bryce. Like, what is the gauge? And when you start adding the human factor in, there's going to be people who look at it different ways. And I respect the way that you fought for that, Trevor, even though you're completely batshit crazy and absolutely wrong.
No, you guys are looking at it.
I respect that, dude.
You guys are looking at it black and white. I'm not saying that the best team shouldn't be in the top 4. I'm just saying there is merit in the decision to the lost column. And that plays, I mean, think about back to the BCS days prior to going to 4 teams. You had
computers, they're all smarter than us.
But you had to be undefeated to go play in the Natty. Wins and losses, you had to run the table regardless if you played in this conference or that conference.
Yeah,
who do you think goes in right now if it's BCS? If we stop playing right now, Trevor, who do you think in terms of that point that you just made? Georgia,
don't hurt yourself.
Georgia, Ohio State today.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Alabama would be like a snarling, smoking school bus headed to the Rose Bowl or Sugar Bowl or wherever they wind up going. Yeah, I agree.
Probably lose to an Oklahoma because they're pissed off.
Maybe to the band competition. Let's go to a couple questions.